Hi, welcome to PhDizzle. I'm your host, Alice Cheng, and today we are interviewing Dr. Marissa Rice, who got her bachelor's degree in biological sciences from Virginia Tech and her PhD in Behavioral and Evolutionary Neuroscience from Cornell, and she's currently a postdoc in human development and developmental neuroscience. We got to connect a little bit before we started recording, but the history is that you and I had actually met almost 15 years ago or 15 years ago-ish in like a summer program doing biology. And now you're still in biology and you made it all the way through, did the PhD and all of that. So give people some background on what made you interested in biology and what made you interested in doing a PhD.
Yeah, I've wanted to be a biologist, I feel like, since I was like 13 or 14. I grew up at the beach and really loved like the science of like what was going on. I think the defining moment for me was like my 10th grade class went to this thing called Sea Camp. It was like in Key West, Florida. And while most of the people in my grade were like, ooh, I'm like wearing a bathing suit and like sun tanning, I was like, oh, look at this like bioluminescence and like I'm learning about mollusks and echinoderms and like this is so cool and like look at, whatever, like squid anatomy. And I was just fascinated. So I thought for a long time I wanted to be like a marine biologist, but like I quickly learned like you don't just like, go diving and like have fun all the time. It's like work too. So yeah, my mom was like, I don't want you just going for marine biology. She's like, I want you to go research jobs in biology. So I literally like was at the library scanning through stuff, and that's when I stumbled upon like the University of Richmond program. So after that experience that we both did, I looked at like Dr. Lessem, who's like our mentor person. I was like, you know what, I would want to be a biology professor, like be an academic where I get to mentor other students, like you get to go on labs and like send people to like wetlands and stuff and go look for sponges or whatever, but you're also teaching and you're like in there doing research and like pushing sort of knowledge. So yeah, I was like locked in at like 16. It was really just what kind of biology.
I'm gonna kind of fast forward a little bit because I guess like you did it and not a lot of people do it a lot. Like, so I'm gonna give you a ton of credit for that. Let's talk about, I guess, during grad school, because you kind of knew you were gonna go, but there was like some moments because you started off in one place but ended up in another. So maybe tell me about that and what you eventually ended up doing research on.
Yeah, I wanted to study like mating systems. So I was like looking at labs that were looking at anything that had to do with like sexual selection and like courtship and competition and like female choice. And I apologize if this is like super jargony. I'm just trying to like throw out sort of like, that's how I was searching for grad schools.
Yeah.
And I ended up at Oklahoma State in a zoology department. But again, it was about the people, right? Like I was searching for who would be a good fit for me. I was looking for someone who was like hands-on, but not too hands-off, like something in the middle. I knew I wanted to do field research, not just be in the lab. There was like sort of a dossier of things that I wanted. And so I ended up in Oklahoma studying zoology, but then my advisor got a job and moved to Cornell, where I am now. And it was like a big shift because I was interested in the same things, but being in a zoology department versus like a psychology department is totally different.
Did you have to shift your research entirely? Like did you have to change your project?
No, not at all. More of like I had colleagues that were doing completely unrelated stuff that were still housed in the same like umbrella department.
Got it.
But like my committee changed a little bit, right? Like I had someone on my committee that was more developmental focused and more like hormones and like neuroendocrine focused. Whereas like over there, I had people who were like studying like nutrients in soil and like elements. So it was just like it was just like so I my committee composition changed, and really just like the breadth and the perspective of how I framed my research changed, but my research itself didn't change at all, which was nice.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your research.
Yeah, so my stuff was all about how do animals make decisions, particularly for mating. Every animal is looking to sort of maximize their things for their survival and their reproductive success, like live and make copies of yourself. It was really approaching my study species is the prairie vole. They're like a small monogamous rodent.
Aww.
And so a lot of the research on them is about like hormones and has to do with like love and like like familial bonds and cooperation and like cuddling and huddling on all this stuff. And my approach was much more about what is like the evolutionary side of monogamy, like why in just for background, only 3 to 5% of rodents or mammals in general are monogamous.
Yeah,
so it's like really rare. A lot of my research sort of centered on like what leads to these decisions. Like it has to be beneficial in some way. What's happening in the brain? A lot of like oxytocin, vasopressin, those are like the hormones we talk about. How is that like regulating decisions? But then my stuff was those same like social hormones that people were studying in like the pharmacology world of like pair bonding and love, and you know those same things were being expressed in spatial areas of the brain, like more traditionally studied, like the hippocampus or like the like RSC, which is like retrospinal cortex. So I was like, wait a minute, is there something about space and how the brain thinks about certain social spaces? What is that combination of space and social? Do you think differently about like your house versus like the movie theater or like the dentist office? Like, are you encoding social information in these physical places?
Are we?
Yes, we absolutely are. Look, one of the examples I use is like, say you know someone from like your yoga class, and like the minute you walk into that yoga room, like your brain is like, okay, cool, we're in this context. So sort of sets the rules of how you behave and who you recognize. But if you see someone from like your yoga class randomly at like the gas station, it might take you a second. You might be like, this person looks familiar to me. I know they're not a stranger, but I don't know why I know them. Do you know that feeling?
Yes.
Like, because the person is,
them,
and it takes you later because you are not primed for that like recognition because you're not in the space where that social information is relevant at that moment.
It's funny. We do this a lot. My husband and I do this a lot when we go out, and we were living in LA for a while. So we'll see somebody and we're like, oh, that person's really familiar. But then it's like, oh no, I know them from TV. So I probably shouldn't approach them, because it's like confusing, because sometimes you're like, oh, you don't remember me, but I know you from like whatever, and it's okay to do that most of the time. But sometimes you actually don't know them, and you just think you know them because you're like used to watching them in a different format.
You're like, oh, they're from that Listerine commercial that I see all the time.
I love Listerine. How could you? Now you're doing a postdoc. Is it something similar, or like what are you working on?
Yeah, it is. It's really similar. It's kind of funny. Like my postdoc advisor found me because I was doing like a podcast interview similar to this, like over Skype, like a few years ago. And I was basically just saying that like how we think about space use in general and just like any kind of decision making needs to be really rooted in how your brain is processing space. I call it like spatial competence. And so my advisor, her lab is like, it's called the Life History Lab, and it's all about as you are developing as a human, your environment and your surroundings is going to impact your brain, your body, like all these different things. It creates like this endophenotype of like you, and it changes how you interact with the world. So a lot of our research is like how do we account for the mismatch of like, say you grow up in one environment and then you end up in school somewhere else, or you move, or the environment changes like a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our stuff is really cool, looking at like things like neighborhood quality and early life stress, and it's very social justice minded too. A lot of our research is really in developmental research, I'll say in the past, is very white centered and high SCS. So people will be like, oh, there's this like no-go task of like, you put a marshmallow in front of a kid, and if they're not impulsive, they'll wait because they can get 2 marshmallows, right? But like, it doesn't account for like if you grew up in a house with like food security, or insecurity rather, or like in a house with like a lot of poverty and scarcity, where like you have no guarantee that you can trust an adult that there'll be more later. So like that kid isn't impulsive, but their life history is determining like this is the better strategy. So it's all about like trade-offs. And so I'm bringing a side of space use into that kind of framework of like, how do we make decisions about moving through our communities and our like human ecosystem as an environment. So it's not like little rodents anymore, but still the same kind of ideas.
So what are the implications? Is it like for designing, I don't know, do you like inform policy, or like what is the hope there?
Yeah, that's the hope long term. There's some really cool stuff. Really, the UK is leading a lot of this stuff. There are these things called like smart cities, where they're consulting a lot of architects and people who do like spatial ecology. But actually right here in the human development department at Cornell, they have something called DEA. And it's not like the drug one, but it's like design and environment, and like, I forget the A of like some kind of application. But literally there's people who are studying how do we as humans interact with living spaces. And so thinking about, could we design dorms to make people more social? So like for example, like a traditional dorm where it was just like a bathroom's down the hall and it's 2 people. We're gonna create a lot of social space just because people have to go pee, they have to go shower. But like, I think like hotel style rooms where like you have a single suite with like, your own bathroom and shower, it's actually very isolating. You have no reason to leave your room. My research in particular is looking at how URM students, so how underrepresented minorities, have a sense of belonging and inclusion on campus. And so a lot of our work is specifically looking at, can we help these, you know, outreach programs to actually retain students from disadvantaged or marginalized backgrounds by changing the physical and social environment of their universities? And do you actually set up an environment for them to thrive and have community, or are you setting them up to fail?
I could see the same thing happening in industry. There's a lot of people who go to work and just come home. They do their job and they come back. And unfortunately, the way we are as like a social society that's not how you like get further in your job. By the way, I think that's stupid. Like the open desk layout, which I hate, but I don't know, maybe there's some merit to that, but I feel like there's probably a better way to optimize that where you can interact with people, but also have like a space where you can concentrate.
Yeah, there's a really cool class that was like ecological psychology, and every single space that's like done open concept, like we have research from when we tried to do open concept schools in like the 80s and 70s, and the first thing they started doing was building partitions because there was no validity to like a kindergarten class be able to see 7 other kindergarten classes. And so it's funny, if you look at those clips of like BuzzFeed or some of these offices, take a look at what those spaces look like, and everyone is making these little partitions. Like they use the like the 3-sided like you remember the like science fair like posters. Like, I mean, I'm being serious. Like, look at clips of like these things, and that's what we do. So in Cal Newport's book Deep Work, he actually addresses it, that the research has been done that one of the best because what people want is that spontaneous connection. And so what they said is the best design is like think of like a bicycle wheel with like all the spokes, right? So each spoke, each like slice, imagine like the edge of that slice is like an office. And then in the middle you have a gathering space, but then all around the edges you have a space. So the idea is like you can kind of walk past a lot of different people's offices and chat with them, and you have like a center space where you can kind of hang out, and you're mixing and mingling with all these different people. But then you go back, you have a quiet space where you can think, but you can like bump into people with different ideas. That
makes sense. In my mind, when you said bicycle wheel, I just thought of like the gears, like, you know, and then I was like, oh, like your desk is on a platform, so your
it's like,
where am I?
When I got into this work, I didn't realize like, how short-sighted we are with building designs. One of the things I learned was in hospitals. So if you can't physically picture like what a space looks like, then you're actually really bad at navigating it, no matter how many maps and signs you have. So if someone's like, okay, I'm gonna lay out this building and it's a square and you go in a loop, cool. The problem at hospitals is a lot of times they get added on other buildings to it. So the space itself is not intuitive of like, you go in one direction, but you can't figure out the shape. And it was, I forget the number, like I hate to like give like a fake statistic, but it was something ridiculous, like nurses spend upwards to like 30 and 40% of their time giving people directions. My advisor and I were just meeting yesterday over Zoom, and we were talking about how do we move ecological concepts into applications of human space use. A really solid ecology concept is the competitive exclusion principle, which is like if you have 2 individuals or two species competing for the exact same resource, one is going to drive the other out. And so you need to do what's called like niche partitioning or differentiation, where, all right, well, I'm going to go for this part of the food, you can go for that part. MacArthur's warblers are the famous example. These birds eat the seeds at the top, and like these birds eat this kind of seed, and these birds eat this part of the needle, whatever. So they could all live, where if they were all going for the same part of the tree, they would die. And I feel like that has an implication to like gentrification. Okay, here's this hot area, and you bring in these really wealthy people and just place all the poor people. What if there was a way, like, if you were going to sort of reinvigorate an area, which I hate like that term, you know, it just feels like, ugh. What if instead you could bring rich tenants into unused lots and like abandoned areas without displacing the people who are already there, so that you can increase property values and improve schools and get access to all the good things that normally happen when the rich people come in, that can share that with, you know, so like it's things like that. Sociology and economics, like they've been thinking about these evolutionary and ecological concepts for a long time, but we're all just using different words to describe the same things. So my hope is that taking ecology and putting it in a developmental neuroscience context and finding ways to be like, oh, sociologists actually understand this. Like, if I had to say it succinctly, I'm really like translating my training and what I've learned with rodents into like helpful applications for like human life and how we move through space.
It sounds like you're building your own research area, which is what you need to do and to become a professor. So is that still the goal?
No.
Wow,
like,
okay.
I know. It's like, that was like a bait and switch. Yeah, it's
down.
It's feeling like I could be like academically adjacent and not necessarily be a PI. So maybe someone who's working more directly with STEM research or outreach. I've really benefited from a lot of programs like the McNair Scholars Program or Louis Stokes for Alliance for Minority Participation. A lot of these like well-endowed programs that helps bridge the gap of people who don't know about academics and like how to go through these processes. My dad was in the Navy and my mom worked in like nonprofit. And one thing people always say to me is like, Marissa, what do your parents teach? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you are so well versed in this area that your parents have to be professors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And at first, like I thought it was at first too. Like I was like, oh, like I really used to think of it in such a cool way. But then it actually really made me sad, because it was like, to be good at this, you have to literally be born into it.
Yeah.
Like that's the perception, is like, I moved through this space so well that I must have inherited this. I must have been born into this, which is wild.
It happens to a lot of people. I mean,
yeah.
And it's not that it's by no fault of their own, right? Like I think it is unfair, but it is not their fault, you know? But we see so many people who are at the top of the food chain, and it's because they were born there. Like, again, they're nice people, but then the people at the bottom can't go up anymore because there's not space. And so then it becomes an unfair system.
Yeah, I think I'd want to do something a little bit non-traditional, of being some sort of independent scholar that is increasing accessibility and sort of being that gateway to like help other people. And I feel like I could have more impact from that rather than being like a PI at a university mentoring grad students. And like 3 or 4 years ago, I started a project called Find Mindspace. And it's like a newsletter and a blog that I focus on helping graduate students who are dealing with mental health issues throughout grad school. I had some issues with that. And so I'm finding like that kind of work, like that forward facing, like reaching out to and serving academics that are kind of in the thick of it, it's like really fulfilling in a way that disseminating research isn't as fulfilling, but it's still awesome.
So let's get to the fun part.
All right.
Which is hobbies and side hustles. So what do you like to do for fun, Marissa Rice?
Wow. How much time you got? No, I'm just kidding. A couple of things. I joined a local like improv troupe in like 2018, 2017. So that was really fun. I did that for a couple of years. I'm like on hiatus now, but I don't know if I'll officially go back. I think that was a season and it was fun. So like that was really fun. And the other thing I've been doing is I was at like a club fair at Cornell where they're like, here's all the different clubs and organizations. So I joined a Freestyle Rap Club that's been like hilarious to do. I've been doing that since 2016. And we still meet every week. and
Did
just
you have to
rap.
like learn how to freestyle rap or
Yes,
like,
yeah. Yeah, well, it's sort of like trial by fire. It's just repetition. Like one of the guys was like, um, the only way to like not be bad at rapping is to just be bad at rapping for a long time.
that makes me feel better.
Yeah, and so that, I mean, literally, like none of us, like maybe a handful of people had a rap background, but it's cool to go from like not being able to like string anything together to being able to like kind of rap about anything. And like now I'm getting into like more like music production and like in quarantine trying to do like
Wow.
home studio stuff and like recording my own songs, which it's just been like a fun hobby to just kind of like,
That's amazing. So if I asked you to rap about something right now, would that be inappropriate? Like, would you do it?
I would do it. I'm
Do I have to give you a topic?
performer.
Can I give you a topic?
You can. We even like do this thing where like we'll pull up a random word generator. So what how about this? I will play
I will beatbox.
Are you gonna beatbox?
I mean, I'm not really gonna beatbox, but I will.
I gotcha.
Like, I'll give you a beat. I will.
But you don't have to give me a beat. But what you can do is, if you want, you can just like type words in the chat, and I'll just rap about whatever you type in the chat.
Okay, ready?
Yeah, whatever you type in the chat. I'm gonna do teeth. Okay. Yeah. Gotta brush my teeth, gotta do it right, gotta make sure I eat, gotta floss after every meal. That is how I feel. Light a candle in the bathroom cause I gotta steal the air freshener is so dope. Got a phone call, but I'm like, nope, don't wanna talk to you. I can't see that, I don't like you. So I gotta pass, wait, gotta go and put my glasses on. I'm standing in the mirror with my new shirt on, feeling so fresh, feeling so cool. Wait, I gotta poop before I go to school. Yeah, I'm changing, I'm evolving. Yeah, my life is solving all the problems about evolution. I'm finding a biological solution. Oh, my research, it rocks off your socks. I'm going to the moon in a rocket. I'm gonna jump off of this beat because we got a PhDizzle interview to complete.
Yes! That's awesome! How did you do that? Do you look at the words while you're like, how does your brain work? Are you just like, do things come to you now, or are you like thinking?
Yeah, I just rap one at a time. So I was like, okay, teeth, and then I can see candles next, and then phone.
But how do you get things to rhyme? Like I can never find words that I couldn't even think of words, Marissa. Oh, phone, then I'll just do electronics. I can't even like think of random words.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times for me, I'm just telling a story, right? So it's like I'm brushing my teeth, I'm in the bathroom, I light a candle. So like the word candle, I didn't have to rhyme candle, I just had to use it.
That's true.
So
okay.
Like, I lit a candle, I answered my phone. I did, whatever.
That was good. That was very good.
Thank you.
How long did you have to be? How long were you bad before you became good?
Oh, jeez. I feel like at least a year or two. To me, like I like hobbies that are fun and challenging, but like you have a positive environment to grow. This club met from 5:30 to 6:30 every Friday. So it was a nice thing where like when I finished my lab work for the week, I could like walk down to the arts quad and go into this room where we just have a computer playing beats over the speakers. And we just sit there as a group, it's like 10 of us, sometimes it's 7 of us, and you just get to know these people. And then sometimes afterwards we like walk down the hill to like a dining hall, or some of us will like go to College Town or go to a bar and like hang out afterwards. But it just was a cool space of like a way to end my week that was like low stress. And so I could be bad because I was in this space of people who were like encouraging me. And so it was cool over the years as a graduate student to be there a lot longer than most of the undergrads, going from being like the bad person to like being more of a more senior person to like encourage new people.
So we had the rap, we had the improv.
Yeah, I think the third thing I do that was fun is I hosted trivia on campus for grad students.
Ooh, do you come up with the trivia or do you find the questions online?
I find the questions online, but I write them myself. So like, I write the quiz myself. So like it was like 20 questions and I had different themes. I feel like that was like another like just fun thing to create community for other grad students.
Mm-hmm.
and I like stepped down right before I defended in the spring. Right now, I'm doing a project called like Be Prolific. So it's a quote from Natasha Rothwell, who's a writer for like Insecure and Black Lady Sketch Show. She's hilarious. And the idea is like be prolific, like not perfectionist. My goal is to at least like 20 songs in 2021. So every 2 to 3.
Why not 21 songs?
Well, because I was gonna it was gonna be 24 because like 2 a month, but I wanted to like build in a margin of error. My stuff is pretty silly. Like my first song that's on my SoundCloud it's called Energy, and it's a battle rap from the perspective of like I'm kinetic energy and I'm battle rapping against potential energy.
Nice. That's very
the second song is just completely a joke. It's like I wrote it right before the pandemic, like in February of last year, and it was about blowing off people to stay at home and binge watch TV.
Oh no!
Yeah,
and now you can do that.
Yeah.
PhDizzle.
Having fun with smart people who do cool things.